No, it's okay. Let's try that one on.
You're on.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. It's 1:04 p.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards, and to my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. We have a whole host of folks in the boardroom today, which is exciting, including County Manager Miro Chavez, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development Josh Cummings, Jeremy Davis and Brett Burris from his team at CPED. Some other CPED folks, I see Vince on the screen, I saw Linda there briefly, and our Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, also through Zoom. So today we've got an hour and a half laid out for community planning and economic development service processes and fees. And the public can follow along this meeting on the YouTube channel, Thurston County YouTube, or through a conference line at 360-252-9020. The pin will be 1234. And directly to Josh or Ramiro?
If I may, thank you, Commissioners. I personally looking forward to this conversation. I believe this is the first conversation that we're going to have with the board related to process and fees. I know the board has been interested in the last couple of months as to how the fee structure is. And you also authorized to go ahead and go through the fee assessment as to where we are on based on from other counties. So all that is going to be at least touching today. And again, no decisions for you today. It's just beginning the conversations with the board. More information will follow, and again, this is the start of this great conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, County Manager. I am Joshua Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. We have Brett Burris with us here, Manager of Development Services, and Jeremy Davis, our Operations Manager. And so just kind of stepping back a little bit, we've had many conversations over the years about how we can serve citizens better in Thurston County, and recognizing the old adage, time is money. We believe strongly that our fees, the amount that we charge, and the process, the amount of times that we charge those fees, have a huge impact on the way that we serve citizens. And I just want to kind of step back a little bit, and you guys have seen the 5 years of change timeline. It's available on the internet as well. But thinking back to how far we've come, and as we start this next big piece of the change on the project process review and fee and database upgrade, all those big pieces have gotten here because of the leadership of, if I'm looking at this board, 3 different iterations of the Board of County Commissioners, starting with Commissioner Edwards, then Co-Chair Menser, and now Commissioner Mejia. And so I just wanted to say thank you for, bearing with us as each time we've had an opportunity to re-engage in the education process, and recognizing that we've made great gains, but there's more opportunity, that we're not as good as we're gonna be, but we're not as bad as we once were. And that we've got really great support from the leadership, and that I think that we have a good path forward on how we can continue to serve citizens better. So if you look at that timeline, you can see that in 2018, when resource stewardship became CPED, one of the first things we did with the support of the board was extended the operation hours of the Building Development Center. Commissioner Edwards was a big part of this change. We had been closing the Building Development Center at 12 p.m. and then giving time for our staff to review the entries thereafter, but it really wasn't working with the building development community. So expanding those hours to allow for folks to come in early in the morning to drop off permits and get those things going for the building work, and then coming in after they've completed a day of work up to like 4:30 has been really impactful. That was right off the bat. That was a process improvement that impacted the flow of business and impacted service to the citizens. The next big thing we did was we eliminated multiple permits. So we took out the need to get a permit for exterior siding, the need to get a permit for windows and doors and solar panels on top of houses. We expanded the exemption from 200 square feet. You needed to previously get a permit if you're gonna build anything over 200 square feet. We expanded that to 400 square feet. So right off the bat, we came in looking for ways to serve the citizens. The next big piece that we needed to engage on was the people. If we don't have the right people in the right places, you're not going to be able to make the right change that's necessary for any organization. I was happy to engage in hiring Brett Burris in 2019. We sought someone that had statewide experience in permit and planning in other jurisdictions, as well as the private sector. And so Brett came to us from a local company called SCJ Alliance and brought all of that knowledge into examining our systems. So throughout 2019, it was a lot about process. How do other places do it? How could Thurston County do it better? What are the kinks in our system that are creating the complications for citizens? So 2019 was just a big year of successes in terms of assessment and having the staff be able to tell us what needs to be done and engaging with the business community, the chamber, the EDC, OMB, Olympia Master Builders, the realtors, and Brett did all that. And together with the community, Brett created the project review timeline. And that is one of these pieces where when you think about the way that we charge and go back and forth, it's been referred to as bring me another rock by some in the community, where we're having this iterative process, trying to figure out what's next in the game and what we can ask for, and having 3 different departments, the Public Works Department, Public Health, Environmental Health, and CPED, all asking questions at different times from different pieces. The project review timeline is meant to bring all of that together onto one sheet of paper to provide consistency and accountability and transparency, and we'll get into more of that later. But that was the huge success in terms of piloting that project with the Johnson Smokehouse. And we were able to have great success in that pilot project. The intent was to move forward and place that for all of our permits in the year 2020. Unfortunately, a global pandemic occurred, kind of put a little kink in the rollout of that project. But still, despite the global rollout, we had over 20,000 citizen interactions in 2020. We had over 4,300 permit applications come in. 460 of those were single-family resident applications, as compared with 411 in 2019. So we had a building boom that we're all aware of in 2020. So we had more single-family resident permits come in, applications in 2020 than 2019 during the pandemic. And we continue to serve those folks. We were able to issue 371 single-family residential permits in 2020. And we ramped up our e-inspections program. In 2019, we had 5 as we were trying to get it off the ground using just email systems and back and forth with the iPhones and whatnot. In 2020, we completed 996 inspections and now have created an outreach to ensure that folks are aware that this tool exists. So the builders and the contractors, if they so choose, can go through the e-inspection process on the minor items that have been reviewed and approved by the board. So that's the foundation. Just as we get into all of the places that we've been and the places that we want to go, the next big piece, as the board has been asking, is how do we compare in terms of our fees? What are our fees like? Why do we have our fees? What do our fees do? And then what can we do to reduce the cost? And so that's where the presentation really begins. We have 90 minutes, as the county manager said. The hope here was to have a full and in-depth conversation to make sure that we're serving the commissioners in the next steps. I think if it's all right, we'd like to go through this presentation and then come back to questions and then use that whole time. We can flip back to the presentation as needed. Does that work for the commissioners?
That's good.
Okay, so we'll start off with the presentation and then I've got an IT opportunity. Share screen. I think it's the green. The one that's like highlighted. I'm hearing hold music too for some reason.
It's our conference line.
Oh, got it.
It's one of the new pleasures of being.
Is that what's going on there?
Well, we'll stop using this next week.
Okay.
Since it's open to the public, so
Sounds good.
Sorry, I thought that was in my head.
I know, it's been freaking me out all week.
What is that?
Whose phone is on? It's Tom's, you know?
Elevator music.
All right, so let's kind of start in the presentation and then we'll kind of hand it off to Brett and then to Jeremy and just kind of go through that way. Hey. All right, so overview. Seriously, haven't used this here. There we go. So like I said, we're going to give an overview of the fee structure, how CPED currently operates. Do you need to turn a little more? Or?
We know, maybe we can just split the difference so you can see it as well.
I'm good. Thank you, Christian. Thank you. So we'll do an overview of the CPED fee structure. that'll be Brett. We'll talk about the two different big fees that CPED is engaged in, the building permit fees and the land use permitting fees. And then we'll talk about the process improvements, a little more in depth on the project review timeline and other ways that we think we can improve the process. So if you're ready, we'll go with fee structure?
Sure.
Okay.
So as, again, Brett Burris, Development Services Manager with Community Planning and Economic Development. As Josh just mentioned, this is an overview of the fees, and he's absolutely correct. We have two major fees that we are responsible for. Primarily the building permit fees, and those fees address the building permits themselves, inspection, fire code permits, and other inspections. And then there's the land use and planning application fees, which are typical for subdivisions, special use permits, short plats, things of that nature.
And I might add, just kind of going back in time a little bit, the fees that we currently have, those two fees, but mainly the land use fees, started from consultant work, FCS, in 2007, that the work was began. And then in 2008, by resolution 14050, the BOCC approved the fees within that consultant's fee study, including the 100% full cost recovery model, which is that first bullet point up there. And then in 2010, and we'll probably get to this, by resolution 14389, the building fees were updated. And then in 2013, by resolution 14958, the BOCC approved the auto escalation of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So our prices increase automatically based to the CPI. And we're getting into more of that in just a minute. I just wanted to give you that timeline. All the fees that we currently have a history and board approval. These aren't things that CPED's able to just do. It's because of boards previous that we came here. Sorry.
Because of that, could you at some point add the dates as to when those came in? And the only reason is so we can kind of, well, gee, that's a long time ago, we might want to review that.
Yeah, we have a timeline that we
Yeah.
could provide you for sure.
Okay.
So in addition to building permit fees and land use fees, CPED also collects fees on behalf of public health, public works, park impact fees, transportation impact fees. However, the other departments do have their own individual fee schedules that they abide by for their permits. Other agencies that we collect fees for are impact fees for schools, fire, and also the Washington State surcharge as well. So the BDC handles and collects all of those permits.
Surcharge, what's that?
It's related to the well mandate.
Oh, the
fee.
$500. Got it.
And we'll touch more on the fee study with Jeremy. So, but for our purposes, we're focused in on the land use and building for CPED fees at this moment.
Mhm. Thank you. So building permit fees, they originate from the Washington State Building Code, specifically the International Code Council, or the ICC. They set the market rate for estimate construction costs per square foot. The ICC market rate for residential construction for 2021 is $123.68 per square foot. And however, in 2010, the last update that they had prior to 2021 was $96.83 per square foot. And I'd like to note to the board that Thurston County still uses the 2010 rate currently of $96.83. And if you were to essentially take a 2,500 square foot home with a 480 square foot garage and a deck, these fees apply per square foot, and the builder is responsible for creating a valuation of that, of time and materials, and then this fee gets calculated according to that valuation. So under the new fee, or I'm sorry, under the older fee, a 266,000 square foot time and material build is approximately $3,000 permit. If it was $123, it would be more of a $4,000 or $5,000 permit.
And in the briefing material, in the board briefing notes, we have a table that was created previously that does the sample calculation on that building permit fee. This.
Somewhere in there, I know I saw that.
Oh no, it's in the,
I went through it.
yeah, me too.
And it's just for your reference.
It's on
Oh,
the,
I've already got notes on it. Matter of fact, I've got notes on it. That's questions about it. I hope we get back to it.
And I think that that's a really important piece. the flexibility that we have on the building permit fees section is limited. The only thing that we as a county can do is accept the ICC's direction on the market rate. And the Board of County Commissioners accepted the 2010 $96 rate. We as CPED have not, we've heard the board making a concerted effort to ensure that costs are kept low for citizens. We have not brought the escalator of the 2021 square foot amount to the board. So we're currently at the low 2010 rate of $96 as compared to the current $123 market rate recommendation. I think that's an important piece to remember. And the flexibility is very limited in what we can do with the building permit fees.
And unlike the land use fees as it relates to the CPI annual increase, building permit fees do not automatically adjust.
That's a good point too.
That's a good point.
And so move to the land use.
So land use and planning fees, Josh kind of went over the schedule of the adoption, but the Board of County Commissioners adopted the land use and planning fee schedule by resolution 14958, based on the fee study completed by an external consultant called FCS Group. The BOC's decisions currently in place, the fee amounts to cover 100% costs to complete projects, more complex projects that require more time to review, applicants may be billed hourly for additional staff time spent, and hourly rates are tied to the computer price index or the CPI, and is annually increased April of each year. And that was the resolution that was approved in 2013.
And so those first 2 points are really, so this one has, the board has more flexibility than the building permit fees. This is where as you can see, the FCS group provides their recommendation, the external consultant, where the board gets to adopt and think about how the adoption of those fees works. Those first 2 bullet points, fee amounts to cover 100% cost of complete project, and more complex projects will maybe build an hourly rate. Those are places where the board has a decision in terms of how much, if at all, you'd like to subsidize permits in Thurston County. Some jurisdictions do and some don't. And B, that complex projects on the hourly rate, that's the back and forth. That's the bring me another rock that we believe we have a solution to in the project review timeline. Also, this is going to be Jeremy's slide to provide more detail. And the cost comparison, so the Board of County Commissioners requested that the CPED and Public Health and Public Works work together to reach out to a consultant to get information on how our fees here locally compare with other county jurisdictions as well as the cities here within Thurston County. And also, and we'll get to Jeremy in a second, but I'd note that we do have this fee comparison that was included in your packet from 2017. This was an internal review done by staff at the time from a previous director and a previous development services manager. We believe this is an okay jumping off point, but it's done internally. And we thought for better numbers and information for the Board of County Commissioners, it'd be important to have an external consultant do a more broad search and an apples to apples comparison as opposed to having it be an internal staff memo. So this is for your background and nothing against this memo in particular. We just think it's always better to have external groups looking at us instead of us trying to tell the story ourselves.
What year did you say this was?
2017. And it tells a good story. It says how we're middle, if not lower than other jurisdictions. But from my perspective, I'd rather have an external consultant providing their perspective. And that is the work that Jeremy Davis is leading, engaged with Public Works and Public Health. Jeremy, would you like to take it over?
Sure. So in February of this last year, Public Health, CPED, and Public Works met, and we developed a chart and all that to kick off a cost and comparison study of our CPED land use and development fees. Since then, in order to get a better answer to the board and to do a gut check, we, as an interim step, we decided to do a short survey of jurisdictions, as Josh mentioned, so that we could have an idea of where exactly we are at in comparison to other jurisdictions in the state, as well as others that do full cost recovery and whether or not they do or don't, I should say. And so we engaged FCS Group again. They seem to be one of the leading experts on doing these sorts of fee studies for different jurisdictions. And we're still in the middle of gathering some of that information. And to be point blank, we did use the 2017 document as a jumping off point. And we looked at that and we saw how they developed that table for the board at the time. And at the time, staff had just gone through the fee, the online fees that all the jurisdictions had posted. So they didn't actually call and engage the jurisdictions to find out how much you charge for this or that. So what we've tasked FCS Group with is developing 2 different scenarios for us to tell us what those costs are. The first one is to tell us how much does it cost to permit a single family home in these jurisdictions. And the second one is telling us how much does it cost to pay for a 15-lot subdivision in the various jurisdictions. And the ones we're having them survey include Kitsap County, Snohomish County, Whatcom County, Clark County, Pierce County, Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. And our preliminary findings are just what Josh said. We're looking like we're going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't want to say exactly where that's at because I want to give them time to finish with that survey. And after they finish that, we'll bring it back to the board and let you know what those results are.
And so one of the things, the main 2 questions that we're asking are our permits, how do they compare? First off, that's a very difficult, complicated answer because everyone is the permitting differently. So that's one of the things that Jeremy's working through. That's the apples to apples comparison. And then B is what other county or city jurisdictions are 100% cost recovery. So those are the 2 things that Jeremy's working through right now with the consultant. Our presumption is some of the other counties are 100% cost recovery as well. And those counties are higher than us at this time. And so that would include, we
believe that Clark County does full cost recovery based on their fee schedule, some statements by their planners, and possibly Whatcom County. We still need to double check with their fiscal staff on that.
And in terms of local jurisdictions, it's been relayed to us that the city of Lacey does 40% subsidizing, so 60% cost recovery for the applicant. So 40% of application's permit is being paid for by the city, whereas 100% of county is being paid for by the citizen.
I believe the subsidy is general fund.
General fund from Lacey. So this is I think a good kind of break in the presentation because then we're going to move into the solutions with the project review timeline and some of the other process improvements we've done. Any questions on the fee and fee structure? Is that, I was just thinking about that in terms of flow,
That would be good.
right?
As you're moving through this, like for Jeremy, did you include in the discussion at least like somebody from, say, Olympia Master Builders to, because where we might say, well, this is what we charge for that, they might then say, because they're using the process, they might say, well, yeah, but you also put this, and this in there, which totals out to something different, maybe than just a flat per square foot or whatever, however you're doing it. I just asked that question because if they were included, then it gives more credibility, I guess, to the end result. Then it just can't be, yeah, well, staff did this, But if you've actually included somebody in the review, I think you just, almost for that same reason, Josh, that you brought up, that you need somebody from the outside to take a look at it. It's just a credibility issue.
No, it's okay.
Not questioning,
No, I think that's a really good point. So to your point, yes, we did the external consultant for credibility. OMB, EDC, and the chamber, members of the chamber are aware that we're doing the fee comparison study. But I think, we should totally have them review it. That's a great idea.
Well, and I might also add that we actually took 2 permits out of our permit system and looked at the fees that we charge.
Just took like an audit of just blind audit, pulled it out.
Yeah, a real case study. Yeah, exactly.
But I think later in your presentation, you're gonna be touching on the group.
Yeah.
And that will be the right format as to how we can get feedback from the business industry.
I would think that just looking at the actual fees charged versus, you said what was done in 2017, just looking at what's posted.
Yeah.
That's where you get that, attack of, oh, this is superficial, it's not the real case. Because they'll tack stuff on along the way.
Yeah.
As Commissioner Edwards was saying.
Did you get that, Commissioner Owens? That's a big point. It's a case study, so we actually did real world applications.
Oh, yeah, what Jeremy's done too. Yeah, sounds good. I would be, because I'm kind of I don't know if you want to call it stickler or the historical, because I'm the old guy, you know? So, when you started off your presentation with the dates and stuff, you started from 18.
Yeah.
But actually, you started from 17, I mean, in reality, because that's when we made the change to opening up the permit center for 8 hours a day. It took place about
It was, yeah,
May or
You know,
something.
I'm not sure when the
Yeah.
previous group did it, but we finalized.
Well, nobody else should know, because nobody else was here, except me, you know?
here.
Yeah, you were here, that's right, yeah. It was about May of 17. So it gives you a little longer progression of what you've been doing. And you probably did some other things in 17, if you look back. I know we had some personnel changes, maybe other things that took place.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I didn't want to call you the senior commissioner.
Yeah. When you talk about building permit fees that are prescribed, you know, that we kind of have to follow, like the square footage or whatever it is, market rate or whatever it was, is that something that's written into law and code, and how does that get developed? So is it the same square footage, for an example, just using that as one of the examples, that Pierce County charges or Lewis County charges or Mason County? I mean, I see in comparison to what you guys are doing, you know, so far, we're right there in the middle or less, which is good. But how do they make those charges? So say Lacey, okay, they do just 60% apparently and fill in the void with 40% of general fund, it sounds like. But is there a way that we don't have to follow everything times a square foot? Or, you know, years ago, I think the house that I bought was for about $6,000. You know, about the same for the price of the permit maybe than it is today. And again, that was a while back, so times are changing. Anyway, so I guess my question is there some leeway? And it sounded like on some things there's some leeway, but on other things there's not.
I think your question is, if I may, because I think my question is his question.
Okay.
I was a little unclear when you were talking about the building code. You said there really is flexibility there, but then you said, well, but we're using 2010. So we're using, I mean, we obviously have the choice to use 2010 versus 2021. What other choice do we have? Can we go back and, well, we're gonna use 2005? I mean, I'm just wondering, that's the question. And then you said there's more flexibility on the land use and planning fees, but just, I guess, starting with the building permit fees, this ICC market rate, we're mandated by law to use 2010 or later, or what is it that we're?
So we adopt the building code as released to the ICC, the International Residential, the IBC, which is the building code, that all funnels to this ICC market rate. And I can't speak on other jurisdictions at this time, but my experience in the private sector lends toward most jurisdictions use this same rate.
But I think it's a valid question. We could dig deeper. It's just kind of been a known standard operating procedure that you adopt the market rate, but we can dig into the law and the legal needs and whether we could go back in time. From our perspective, it's
cost recovery. Are you not talking about, you're talking about the land use and planning side? You're not talking about this, because this is just like a flat set amount.
Yeah, but the board could choose to subsidize part of this as well, correct? Or is it just the land?
Until we have the legal conversation, it's just the land use.
But my understanding is this ICC established a ceiling, meaning at this point the ceiling is $123.68 per square feet. The board can take any action and said, well, we'd like to go with $60. So there is not really, I believe is the ceiling that this provides as opposed to the floor.
And we'll look at.
That's
yeah.
my understanding of the ICC is. It gives you the latitude as to what is the ceiling, the highest that any jurisdiction can charge.
We'll dig deeper
Yeah.
into it and get those details. If there, when I said flexibility, the flexibility from the perspective that we understood at this point was you have the flexibility to raise to the ceiling.
And maybe you're gonna cover this as an additional topic as we move on. But for an example, right now, a citizen that comes in has to figure out something to do with the septic process. You know, that's part of it, not only your section, that's the health department, I guess. And then, so then they also need to figure out a driveway and an apron requirement. Somebody too quiet?
That people say that about me all the time.
They never say that about me, Josh.
Nobody says that about me.
Back to the old days. Passing the microphone.
So, you know, and the well, I mean, those are all kind of different outside of, is there a way to combine everything? So the citizen gets one sheet, somebody answers the question, he pays a fee or whatever the deal is. So the well, the septic process, the roads department, because they have to have a driveway. And in the process of having a driveway, they have to have an apron. I think that's one of the requirements, like a, isn't it?
The driveway, yeah, on
Yeah,
the apron, yeah.
yeah, coming off the pavement to keep it from breaking down the driveway, the county road or something. So I'm just thinking about ways to consolidate and make sure, because the builder that does this as a business, the master builders, for example, I mean, they're in here all the time. They know the rules as good as anybody else. So they know what to expect. I'm just looking out for that citizen who wants to build his dream home, that kind of thing, so.
This is perfect because you're gonna touch base later on the presentation in terms of, you know, the single letter, single piece of information.
It sounds like Commissioner Edwards is looking to take over Brett's job.
I don't want Brett's job, it's too complicated for me.
Okay.
So I think in your presentation, he's gonna be addressing that.
Okay, that's, yeah, good.
So I think what Commissioner Edwards is what Josh said earlier on is to bring me another rock process. And while I think it's great that we're looking at the fees, I think in this sense, I'm going to use Commissioner Edwards saying we're, what is it, doing the cart before the horse? And I think in this sense, you know, it's what is a way to streamline the process in order for us, you know, not to be telling people, you know, bring me another rock anymore. And I think that's what Commissioner Edwards is touching on.
I actually got that from Josh's presentation because it's in there on whatever page it is here. No more bring me another rock business, it's right here.
Well, and so that's an excellent segue into the process improvements, if there aren't any more questions on the fees specifically.
I mean, you're doing a great presentation here, I will tell you.
Thanks.
Can we record that?
I guess I had a question about the model of full cost recovery. When you look at, I'm looking at the land use planning slide number 6, hourly rate tied to consumer price index. I guess it confuses me a little bit because CPED's planning salaries, I mean, there's contracts and there's COLA and this, but it's not just an automatic CPI bump, right? So I'm wondering how those figures mesh up. Like, why was that chosen as the right mechanism to calculate full cost recovery? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, mean, I understand that costs rise, but we're using one measure of rising costs, but then we have to match it up to our actual budget. We don't really do the budget the same way. I'm just wondering why that was the right structure for the calculation of, because ultimately, I'm rambling at this point, but ultimately you have to justify you can't, I think it's been argued to us many times that you can't be charging more fees. Like full cost recovery is kind of your maximum, right? I mean, you can't be profiting, the county can't be profiting off the citizens' building permits. So you have to have those numbers pretty well aligned so you can justify. And I'm just wondering why that CPI is in there.
Well, I think we could reread Resolution 14958 when the board at the time in 2013 made that decision, and it will likely have the logic in there, in the CPI, for why it's tied to the CPI.
Because you're bringing a good point, though.
Definitely.
Meaning because on a yearly basis, when the board goes through the budget development process, you look at staff salaries. And you made a determination, is it at 1.5% or 2%? And what you're saying is perhaps with this resolution a little bit disconnected because it's an automatic CPI.
Yeah, I just don't want to get out of sequence
Yeah,
and
so
then look like we're
no.
collecting too much or
Yeah,
or
but
too little than what we were expecting.
Yeah, that is a good point as to how those two decision points can possibly be aligned in the future, and that's perhaps what you're asking.
I mean, maybe there's another valve, maybe there's another thing that gets adjusted that compensates for, I'm just asking, it seems a little strange to me to tie that in, to build that in so rigidly. When the board, I know sometimes we don't do a COLA. I mean, we have for many years, but every year we're asked, do you want to do this? And there's union contracts, I mean, it's like it's complicated pieces. Okay, I'm good. You guys are going.
No, but so that's, I mean, if you look at that slide there, those are 3 board decision points. Those are your latitude to have a conversation on. So for sure, we can research how that logic came in the first place, present it to the board, and see if it's something you want to maintain.
Okay.
Okay, please.
So before you move into the next segment, Josh and I had a conversation about this. One thing is the fees, full cost recovery, that's the cost. Any citizen pays to process any type of permit. What you're going to hear next in terms of process improvements is the value. The value is going to be bringing to those citizens, because one thing is paying the fee, but the value is reducing the time, providing clarity, and creating a little more transparent process for the citizens. That is the value, I believe, and you're going to hear that next as to what the value is for us to continue to improve the process. Right? No, time is money. But
That's right, you heard me say that.
Oh, yes, I learned something this week.
Maybe to expand on that just a little bit, I know, Josh, I think you've been talking maybe with master builders about multiple reviews of, a development with, I don't know, 20 homes or something, but there's only 5 plans or something, or 4 plans, house plans. And apparently Pierce County does some kind of step reduction. So if they're reviewing, it's full charge for the first one, the second one's the same, considering that there's no elevation changes or that type of thing. But then it's a reduced rate for, are you talking about?
Yeah, Brett's working with the OMB representative that brought this to our attention 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, okay, so is that something that you kind of aren't there yet? You're not willing to talk about?
We know where the big change needs to happen, and that's in this presentation. And then we think that we can do other opportunities for sure, and maybe concurrently. But that's a really good concept.
And I guess some jurisdictions do it, some don't. I don't know much about it yet.
Well, we take
I just
all,
know you're talking about it.
you bet, we take all good input
Okay.
and bad input.
And buy them.
We take it all. Anything else on fees? Okay. So then the next page, process improvements. I've kind of gone over these a little bit at the very beginning, but we'll just kind of go back in a little more detail as a refresher. In 2019, as we talked about, brought on Brett, Brett, along with some of the other items that we mentioned, looked at some of our permits that we had in place. We'd done some of them to provide efficiency and service for the gopher, the interim gopher review process. But what Brett saw when he came in was there were better ways to do it. And so with the board's approval, we eliminated the RCARP, which is the Residential Critical Area Review Permit, and in concert extended the vesting for the critical area determination from 1 to 3 years. Do you want to talk more about that in terms of that success?
Sure. In order, my understanding from the past, in order to ensure that the vesting of 3 years for gopher surveys was legally established, the residential critical area review permit, which is actually a building permit, was utilized for that effort. That caused, from my perspective, some confusion because we were asking an applicant to submit a development application for something that was just for a gopher review. So there was an actual site plan associated with it, stamped, approved, so on and so forth. That site plan would then get transferred to the next permitting process. And of course, at that time, the property owners had decided to talk to a builder or maybe an architect or a septic designer, and the whole plan changed. Great confusion. So by eliminating the RCARP, increasing the vesting for the critical area determination does not require a site plan. An applicant or anybody interested in knowing if they have gophers on their property will not succumb to the final stamped approved application while maintaining the vesting that was theirs to begin.
So that's a
lot.
no, and that's great because this is the guy that knows the stuff. Essentially, we in service were creating more work and confusion to the citizens. We found a better way to do it. And that led to an increased confidence in the bigger systems, the way that we do our permitting process in general, which led to the need to go really fast on a community or a building that had been in place and in business for a long time with the Johnson Smokehouse that unfortunately had a fire, but was the perfect opportunity to see if we could pilot the concept of the project review timeline. And that was done in 2019. And we've talked about the 2020 shifts, all those interactions. We also worked with the OMB to extend the permit expiration dates, which you guys were in the process of doing again here soon. You guys, excuse me, commissioners. That's a great help to the building community. And then in 2021, our next steps. The board has approved, and we're in process, as you've heard, the upgrade to update to the permit database system, what we currently call Amanda or A6, working to ensure that we've got a better system that can provide for online submittals of permits, online review of permit and planning, and then the giving the permits, providing the permits through that online system as well. That's the external face. And then the internal face is tracking all of that information. So that's a huge piece. You know, we think of our work in CPED as people, process, tools. That tool is going to be really important as we move into, you know, it's essentially the 21st century, really. But it's stuff that we should have in place already, and we don't. But what we don't want to do is have a brand new, shiny tool in the new database system and put in our old, confusing process. And that's where we don't want to get the cart before the horse in terms of making sure that our process is tight before we go to the next stage with the brand new database system that you're funding through the Board of County Commissioners. And then one that is not in here, but we've heard from the Board of County Commissioners on a number of occasions is there an opportunity for third-party consultants to review portions, pieces, different things, applications that are coming through? We think that there is. We're building a plan right now to bring to the board. There is some work that needs to be done with human resources and ensuring that all of the pieces that we're putting together align with honoring the staff that we currently have. But we think that there's an opportunity for process improvement by having a third-party consultant do some review as well. And that'll be coming to you soon. So without further ado, let's go more deeply into the project review. Oh, sorry, looked away.
Related to the third-party review, I think it's two components of that approach. One is the land use element, you know, related to all the docketing element items the board approved. And the other element is having a third party that can help us on the review of applications themselves. So it's two elements on that third party review, correct?
Yes.
So, clarifying that.
Well, and those are some of the details that we need to work out because those all have different HR components.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit of nuances between the two.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just pipe in here just to say that, I know Commissioner Edwards has been a big advocate for this. My mind is open to, what the possibilities, but I don't want you to feel like the board has directed you to find a way to do that, because I haven't heard the board vote on that or provide that direction. I'm always respectful of a commissioner that wants to hear ideas, and my mind is open to those ideas. But I just want to clarify that, because I have questions about what pieces of the process would be appropriate to be handled in that way. Just as an example, that's outside of your realm, so it feels safer to talk about. I've heard a lot of complaint about stormwater plan reviews and how the county, I've heard criticism that the county's not doing a good job of independently reviewing maybe an engineer comes with a stormwater plan. We've been short-staffed over, on that. So, that's a situation where I might be happy to have a third party present the material, but I'll always want to make sure that the county is doing its due diligence, taking responsibility and reviewing things, not just approving things because the third party said okay. I think we always have that responsibility to check the work and make sure the safety, whatever the issue is, whether it's stormwater or building code or whatever, energy. So just, again, we've always talked about this at such a high level, and I have no problem with thinking about ways to improve it. But, there may be a difference in the board. I just being respectful of your position too. I'm not convinced yet, but I'm not yet convinced that there's a good way to expand third parties. I'm open-minded to that. But I just wanted you to hear that from me.
Thank you.
And that's an excellent point. And what you hear from staff, and Josh and I had many conversations about this, is where those opportunities lies. It's all or nothing, no, it's something between perhaps. And that's really what staff is going to come back and provide that to the board, is seeing those opportunities.
I'm going to rely on your expertise.
Yeah.
I don't know the ins and outs of it. But just so you know where my values lie, then you can comment on, okay, here's what we could do, but there'd be these risks or these lack of checks and balances, and here's another thing we can do that would be more. And I just want that kind of even-handed assessment of each approach, so that the board then can figure out what we want to do.
And that's a good point, because you will hear in the presentation is also conversations about the risk.
Right.
In the risk, whether it's a low-hanging fruit is risky enough, versus a fruit that perhaps you have to reach to the top of the tree, which you may fall down.
And I just want to say, just to temper the tone of that comment, is there's a lot of stuff on here that was driven by the previous board and Commissioner Edwards and that have been great improvements that I might have not known about them. They might have been high on my priority list, but I can see that they've worked value for the citizens. So just to put that out there, I'm very open-minded about any process improvement that's a net gain for the citizen, because we weren't doing things as well as we could back in 16, 15, 13, 07, whatever. There are a lot of things that we were able to improve, so that's awesome.
Maybe I could expand on that just a little bit, would be maybe we could also be made aware of examples, So I don't want to reinvent the wheel in any of my proposal type things. I just want to help citizens be able to do their project at the same time, I'll say protecting the environment, for an example, in the most effective manner that we possibly can. And so by not inventing the wheel, just, if Tumwater does this, or if Pierce County does this, or others that do it, I am not asking to reinvent the wheel. I'm just asking to review, kind of doing the same thing you do. You're open-minded about it. I kind of already think it'll be beneficial.
Yeah, we have more experience with it probably.
But we don't know for sure. until we hear from the professionals, on how it might fit into what we're doing today to make us more efficient, but also to expedite the process for a citizen, because, as Josh mentioned several times in here, time is money. And delay is a loss of time, which is money. So it all boils down to try and kind of like, get another colored rock or whatever, all of that type of activity ends up costing the citizens a substantial amount of money. And that's kind of what, I'll just use a few examples here on something like that. Today's delay, well, not today's, maybe so much I can't say that, but the delay of 3 months ago, and we don't get it approved until today because of the process, the price of a home just changed on financing during that 3 month, maybe $50,000. And that could be attributed, I'll just use one issue, and that is ASB boards that went from, I don't know, $18 a piece or something to $77 a piece, just, and lumber, just 2x4s. So everything that goes into the building process, it really jacks the price up and affects the citizens' ability to finance or even own a home. Really when those kind of things change. So
I bought a house in 2008, and I wish the process had taken a little longer.
yeah, there you go. That's a good way to look at it, I guess. I don't know what Commissioner Mejia would say about that. She probably.
Pipe up at any point. We're being pretty formal here.
No, I mean, in terms of a third party, I have concerns. I'm willing, of course, I'm willing to approach this with an open mind and see it. But my concerns come from the liability that the county will face, being that, there will be those neighbors that will come to the county commission later on and be like, well, the county didn't do its job. And that liability doesn't matter if it's a third party, it will still fall on us. And I think I agree. I would like to see some examples on how it's working in other places and seeing it, if it's even a thing we could do, and what's the risk to the county. And that's kind of like the site where I'm seeing it at. I'm a little bit more cautious because I have gotten a lot of the neighbors that are concerned with things like that, of the county not doing things right, and county moving too fast through things. So that's just my concern. But of course, I'm always willing to approach this with an open mind and see where we go from there.
It seems like the citizens who, I've said this before, but it seems like the citizens who are angry that government's doing in their way have Commissioner Edwards' phone number, and then the citizens that are angry that the government's not doing enough to protect them or whatever have Commissioner Mejia and I's phone number. I don't know why that is, but it's just we hear both sides of it, and there's always two pieces of it. So.
Well, this discussion has been helpful in terms of understanding where we're headed. That is exactly some of those hurdles that we're talking about, is making sure that the work that we're doing, the risk level, all of the different pieces of it, reduces liability, but also improves efficiency. And I think that one of the things that's important, we were really big into customer service in CPED, but I think that it's important to understand who our customers are. We believe that we have 3 customers. We have the customer that's the applicant that comes in and wants to do something with their land. And our mode is to help people do with their land what they want within code and ordinance. So that's customer 1 is the applicant. Customer 2 is the Board of County Commissioners and all of the boards that have come before that have created those codes and ordinances. For whatever purpose, that's democracy, and those elected officials that created those codes are our second customer. And then our third customer are the neighbors and the people that use those buildings or property that we're going to permit. We don't want those buildings catching on fire and people dying. We don't want people, neighbors, drinking potentially water that's contaminated with poop and getting E. coli. Like, that's why we exist. And when we say customer service, it's not just the applicant, it's the board, and it's all of the people of Thurston County that might use those facilities. So using that as our context of how we move forward in the permitting and planning process, that's how we're thinking of this, if that's helpful.
Yep. I like
So,
that.
oh, great.
Way of thinking about it.
So moving on to our concept of a potential solution, the big solution that we think is going to change the dynamic of how permit and planning is done in Thurston County, eliminating that back and forth, is the project review timeline. And I'll jump ahead a little bit. Our perspective is we would like to get this going as soon as possible in 2021. Our concept was to do a couple of slower rollouts in 2020 and then be ready to do a big launch in 2021. Obviously, we didn't have that opportunity. Brett has been engaged with the building community throughout the last year at the Olympia Master Builders, the Olympia Master Builders Government Affairs Group, the whole litany of different industry groups, over 15 organization meetings, as well as one-offs on this project review timeline. The concept that Brett's going to bring forward today has external input from different jurisdictions and from our local builders. So this is, when you talk about it's going to be more credible if you've got folks from the outside coming in, we've done that. This is part of that process. And the hope would be to initiate this process in September of this year, likely, potentially. And part of that, we've also, so a lot of that work that Brett's done in terms of outreach has been, ad hoc. But we've started more formal discussions with the Thurston Chamber of Commerce and creating a business advisory group that's going to meet mid-month every 2 months. They're aware of the project review timeline. This is going to be the first thing that we talk about, hopefully, if we get kind of the thumbs up from the board in changing the way we operate. This will be the first topic in mid-July to talk about the rollout and to receive final input. This is like everybody put everything in before we launch in September. And then we'll meet again mid-September to see how the rollout has gone. And then we'll meet again November to see what things need to be adjusted before we head into 2022. So we've got a timeline for this project review timeline and the launch. But the first next step is to ensure you, the Board of County Commissioners, understand what this is and how this is going to impact positively the permit process. Ready to go, Brett?
Sure. So the project review timeline,
PowerPoint.
There is no PowerPoint on this one.
Okay.
No, this is a concept, and if you have more questions, we can bring you the full PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so we'll just go over the general concept.
so what is the project review timeline? The project review timeline is a step-by-step approach to reviewing projects that is date-specific, time-specific, and action-specific. The key objectives of this project review timeline is to create predictable and a consistent process for both the applicants as well as staff. Promote accountability for both the county and the applicants.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Brett?
Yes, sir.
And it's here on the last page of the CIS if you want to follow along. I did my homework last night.
There's
Thank you, sir.
So this is
So
not
go
the
ahead.
PowerPoint, but it does outline the process.
Yeah.
Thank you. We do have a big PowerPoint.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you guys, hey, this is super. I don't know if I've ever used this term. But
Excuse me.
I just want you to know that.
Yes, that's a good idea. Follow along on this part of the board briefing form. Thank you.
Got it.
Promote accountability for both the county and the applicants, and then coordinate the review timelines and goals between all departments of community planning, economic development, environmental health, and public works. This timeline, project review timeline, again, is intended to bring together the groups, bring together the entire process, one county approach, if you will, in project review. There are some takeaways that we can go over in more detail if you like, but In order to ensure accountability and predictability and consistency, we're asking for the larger projects to sit down as they submit their applications, so there is no confusion on what is submitted. Again, the intake appointments will serve as the completeness review, meaning that we can deem an application complete or not complete at that time. Staff will have 2 rounds of review. Once the application is received, we will review it, determine if there's any additional information needed in order to proceed. If there is information that's required, we will send a letter saying, please submit the following. And then once they resubmit at another intake appointment to ensure that all the items have been addressed, we will then review it the second time and lean ourselves to a decision or a recommendation. Please note that us providing this timeline is our commitment to project review and applicants. We are asking the applicants to commit to the county that they will provide the correct information, that they will ensure that they are meeting codes and ordinances, because once we get to that point of decision or recommendation, if we don't have all the information, that could lead to a denial. I'm not going to lie. If someone has chosen not to submit a critical piece of information, or if someone is not interested in providing it and they feel that their application serves the code correctly, we will pass that on to the hearing examiner. Let the decision makers make the decision kind of approach. Please.
Yeah, so 2 things. The first thing is, thank you. So in this presentation, I sat in on one of the more recent presentations that Brett provided to the Olympia Master Builders, and one of the builders, I don't know if you are familiar with Stuart Drebick from Adroit Contracting, he said, wait a second, you mean we've got to have all of our stuff ready at the beginning and complete? This is going to be a whole big change. And we said, yeah, that's pretty much the crux. And he says, and you guys only get 2 bites of the apple? And we said, yep, that's pretty much the crux. And he says, if we don't agree with you, we go to the hearings examiner and they make the decision and it happens faster. Yep, that's pretty much what's happening here. So instead of us, the regulators, trying to build the case for the applicant and going back and forth and going back and forth and charging hour by hour, we're going to move through our process, what we believe the applicant needs to be successful. The applicant has the choice to provide that information or not, but no longer will we try and build the case for the applicant. The applicant has the responsibility to build their case for the application in honor of speed to getting to a decision at the hearings examiner.
The hearings examiners, though, only would come up if somebody challenged it, right?
And if there is that's correct. Well, it depends on the permit. If it,
In certain permits.
Some of them have to go to a hearing examiner no matter what.
correct. Yep.
Like a says special use, yeah.
Large subdivisions.
Okay.
And the second, I thought that exchange with Stuart Drebick was it was priceless. It's exactly what we've been trying to
That's
accomplish. Yeah, and it was great. The second big piece is bringing all of the departments together on this matrix. That's why I just included this piece of the PowerPoint presentation. I think this is the crux, that we've had this ongoing conversation of the applicant saying, well, I don't remember you ever asking for that. And then us saying, well, you never provided this. This tool is going to be where all of that information lives, and we can refer back to this matrix, and every department's using it. Environmental health, public works, CPED, one document, one list, accountability and transparency, date specific, what we are requesting, what they have provided, what our response is. This is the tool that's been missing in the conversation for permitting in Thurston County.
Is this going to live on your new database?
Exactly.
And then the other departments will have access to it?
That's exactly right.
I would, if I may go a step further.
Just one second.
Oh,
Is it going to be like a live document where every department can go in, or?
Sorry.
I'm wondering, is it going to be where all the information from all the other departments are updated on this sheet instead of having one for each department and it's not correlating?
That's part of our core requests for the database system, that it's live, not just for us internally, but that the applicant can see what's being updated.
and if I may take it a step further.
Sorry.
And if made the new Amanda system, what is going to happen is going to be is going to allow for a true electronic submittal of applications. And also it will be true electronic transactions on the reviews. So everybody will see it live, everything what is going on the permits. And I believe that at least that is the vision that I have on the new Amanda system, but I think that's one of the requirements.
So the new Amanda system, it's not gonna be called Amanda, right?
We're calling it permit database system,
Okay,
the new permit database.
PDS, it's not very
It'll have a name as we get closer to finding the product.
Percy or
An acronym that says fast, then you build up the definitions.
There you go. You wanted to take it a step further?
Yes, I'd also like to note that this is the tool that will be used if we request additional information. And this is an organic document, meaning that you'll see on the far right side that there's an applicant response required. So if we ask for an updated drainage report, or Public Works asks for an updated drainage report per this code, it's their responsibility to say, submitted it in accordance with code. If we ask for if a additional wetland information, for example, is requested in order to determine a buffer, the applicant has the choice to say, we feel the buffer is adequate. This is a living document. This will go to the hearing examiner, and each item of specificity that needs to be addressed will be addressed in front of the hearing examiner.
And that's really important. That takes the concept of subjectivity out, where we don't think that the county is understanding their code correctly. Okay, there is an adjudicator for that process, and you get to make your case here and there. And so it just streamlines that process once again. So those are all, I mean, it's like we're selling rainbows and sunshine, right? I always want to make sure that the question that I think about it in advance is, what's the potential drawback for this? I think there is one big drawback for this. It's a big change. This is changing the way that business has been done in Thurston County for a long time. And just to be like, I want to make sure that I say this appropriately. There's two major hurdles that are going to occur. There's going to be staff input on this big change because they're so used to the systems that the way they are now. And there's likely going to be business input from this big change because there is an industry that's created between this back and forth. When you think of contractors and consultants, they have individuals that are paying them as well. And so this change in process, this shortening the process, is going to likely have an impact in the way that they do business. So you as county commissioners, over the next few months after September, may start to hear that this process is going too fast, that we aren't sure that we want to do this anymore. From my perspective, I see that as a potential drawback, and I want you to be prepared for that potential eventuality, but it's in service of the end applicant. It's in service of the person that wants to do something with their property, that we're moving at this speed and efficiency, but also honoring codes and ordinances. So those are the two potential drawbacks. Other than that, I believe that this is the way that we're going to reduce the cost and the time that we engage with citizens on what they want to do with their property. Questions?
Time is money.
Time is money.
Questions?
No, I can only echo, this is great. This is a good work in progress explanation.
So I guess my only thought would be, it doesn't need a formal decision, but just a thumbs up that you're good with us launching September 1.
And you've had, if I remember correctly, prior to the pilot launch, when I was newer on the board, you had some community, like master builders and community stakeholder meetings. In fact, I think I attended one, kind of in the back of the room, just to hear what you were presenting downstairs. That was one that I remember, but you had a few. So I mean, you've kind of tested the waters, I would think, in terms of if people are gonna freak out and say, this is not, or the people that you were addressing, Josh, that might not benefit from this or find this to be detrimental in some way. I mean, presumably you would have heard some preliminary feedback, and it felt to me like the room, my read of that room, that one I attended, was positive, curious, but interested and mostly supportive was what I read from the questions and stuff. Yeah.
I do think when Josh talks about some people are gonna feel they're losing out is, the citizen, the contractor, may not have to hire that troubleshooter anymore to guide this process through. That troubleshooter might have to go ahead and pound some nails. Because they're not going to need to be sitting around up here waiting, having an appointment, waiting for an inspector, whatever it is. The efficiency mode is just gonna be so beneficial to the citizens in general, but at the same time, with all the protections built in. Yeah, so.
See, I like to think the project timeline proposal, I think, is going to be beneficial, but the success, I believe, is going to be the partnership with the development community. Because as Josh stated on the Mr. Drevick's comment, so you only have the opportunity to take 2 bites of the apple. Correct. But what happens in between the bites is really how the developer community needs to be part of this. Because we go through the initial review, and in between, they also need to be consistent in providing that information, because when we look at the project timeline and some of the accountability we have put in place for the county staff is this. But in between is what makes a difference also. And they need to be part of that, because when we look at the overall timeline, including the developer's timeline in which they need to provide that accurate information, that is going to be an influence of that as well.
No, I mean, that's right on. So we're putting time constraints on ourselves at the county, but in the middle, we have flexibility for the applicants. They have however long within code and ordinance to provide the information. So if they come back and they say, this project took 2 years, county, why did that happen? Well, we say, we did our 68-day review, and then we did our second 77-day review, but in the interim, you took a year to provide us that information. That's why, and that's where the transparency comes in. Thank you, that's a good point.
We have 14 minutes.
Yeah. When a citizen currently, let's see, I'm trying to think, you did 20,000 interactions. I don't remember how many permits you did. 400 and some houses were granted permits to build a house. I'm gonna guess that.
371.
Okay, something like that, but I'm gonna guess that the majority of those were built by the business, you know, master builders or whomever building a house for somebody. Do you have any idea how many of those permits that came in across your counter were individual homeowners that decided, I want to add a bedroom, or I want to build a garage, or whatever it is.
Home office.
Huh?
Home office,
Or home, yeah, that's coming. Home office is for sure coming.
COVID-19.
And so that individual that wants to take that on by themselves to do that project, what is there going to be in place to help? Because the professional, the builder, the developer, those people are in a different ballgame than the citizen that walks in the door and wants to take on a project. And I don't know if it's a conversion for grandma to move in the garage that's been there, whatever it is, but it's a permit process, you know. So is there going to be some mechanism in place that we can help the citizen maneuver the form, I guess?
Yeah. No, I mean, so back to one of the original points, our goal in CPED is to help citizens be successful.
I like your sign.
In their application, thank you. Yeah, we just updated it recently. But the navigation, this is the navigation tool that mom and pop have been missing. That we say right up front, here are the things that you need. And we already do guide folks through the system.
Okay.
But we're guiding them on a windy path. This is guiding them on a straight path. If that's.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to go 17 times to get a different rock.
Right, and you know
It's all
that
done.
every department's asking for
No, no, I'm liking the whole thing. You guys are right on track from
at one time.
perspective.
Can I ask you guys, since it's on your list of kind of things we did, can you help me in, like make the case for like the extensions that we've been doing. You talked about a building boom in 2020. So who are we helping when we just extended the permits? And when do you see that the need for that to stop because we're back to a normal construction era or whatever? I mean, kind of how do I justify that to people that question why we're doing that if there's been so many applications and construction activity?
Well, the people we're helping for the first part of the question is the entire gamut from mom and pop to the professional development company. Resources, as it's been relayed to me, are difficult to find. Professionals are difficult to hire just because of the boom itself. And so that 6-month time frame that some applications have that require a geotechnical report, finding a geotech available within that 6 months to deliver the product has been difficult, again, from everything from mom and pop to the large corporations. As it relates to when the extensions would end, I think that we have to reevaluate that at the time near September 31st as being proposed to determine if it's time and provide the board with an understanding of the reasons why it is or it isn't.
Good. Just one more follow-up.
Can I add to that real quick too? So think of it as supply chain. So COVID impacted in a couple of different ways. The board made a decision earlier in 2020 to do the hiring freeze. So we had less staff at the same time that building boom started to occur. So then we had a backlog of files to review. That backlog is currently working through the process right at the same time that because of COVID again, you've got a supply and demand problem with contractors. And so they're not able to complete their project because they can't get a contractor. We're not able to complete the review because we've got a backlog and we've got old process. And so what happens next is the permit that they applied for expires. And then they've got to go back to square one and pay for a new permit. And so until we're out of that supply chain pressure in terms of the backlog and in terms of contractors that have all been impacted by COVID, where we believe that we should keep extending these permits and not impacting the applicant and making them go back to square zero. We don't know when that's going to be. I think that's why we keep doing it every 6 months, is we're hopeful that all these things that we're doing, these process improvements, working through the backlog, all the hiring, we're at 100% capacity. Thank you for that opportunity. But all of that is going to work to decrease the need for future extensions. We're not out of the woods yet. It's going to be, I would say it's going to be longer than 6 months, but we hope that we can keep chiseling away at it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it if there's a nexus, and I
Yeah.
just needed to kind of have that spelled out. So,
Yeah.
right. Yep. Oh, sorry, you up first?
No, I don't have any questions. I mean, I just, my only comment on this is thank you so much for working through this. And I mean, this seems great. And I won't, I'll admit I'm very excited about it. And, this has been kind of like the answer to most of the complaints that I've been getting, especially from those smaller, the small mom and pops places that are trying to work through the system, and I've heard many times it's not really about the fees, it's about the back and forth, the process and the time it takes. So I think this answers a lot of that. And so I'm very excited about this. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think all I want to do maybe at this point is expand on maybe what you were asking earlier. I think a good example, I ran into a citizen yesterday, happens to be an old young boy that went, I don't know, I guess he went to school with my kids or something. Anyway, he was singing the praises of Commissioner Mejia. And so what had happened was on an extension on a sewer issue that he was dealing with, he was trying to put in a system that was kind of an unusual extensive system that the health department required because, I don't know, soil conditions or whatever it was, to get this in, and his permitted run out, I think. And I can't tell you his last name, Lewis, his last name. Anyway, that extension allowed him to not have to buy another permit, but to extend his existing permit. But the reason that it had expired was because during the COVID, all this stuff shut down. And even now, with the extension, if I should go back and talk, he's scared to death. He's got to buy some big plastic tanks or something like that, and they're not available because of workers not being on the job at some location, and there's a building boom going on around the country.
Yeah.
And these tanks are utilized somewhere. So now he's sweating, how can he get that done? Because I told him, I said, well, as far as I know, I think that's covered by this extension to the end of September. Yeah, I know, but I can't get that stuff. So you might hear back from him at some point, but he was thrilled, but it was a case
Well, I
where.
get it. All right, well, glad we were able to help.
So I would say that's a very good point in terms of what happens next. So we're excited about this process review, project review timeline also in terms of the efficiency of the process. One of the things that we also believe it's going to reveal in 2022 is where our code and ordinance can actually be adjusted. The process has kind of put this blanket over what needs to be done in our code and ordinance. We've taken some of the pieces and made adjustments, but we believe that there's more. We don't know what that is yet. So yes, we're excited about improving, but know that we're going to continue to try and get better constantly. This is not the end of the road. This is the beginning of a big change, and we're excited for it.
Journey.
It's a journey.
All right, thank you, guys. We're
So-
adjourned.
Next steps, we're going to engage with the chamber. We're going to launch this September 1. We're going to come back with just a quick overview of the cost comparison study that Jeremy's going to complete. And then we'll have the full cost comparison study after we've got our process and our database in place. So we'll come back with some of that preliminary information, but do the rest after we're tuned up. Sound good?
Did I tell you, I think this is a good deal?
All right. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Good job.